Well, wait a second. If it's wrong in your opinion, then it's wrong. How can you endorse it? What would be your definition of a Chassidishe
for anyone? And that's why, like I said, everyone should go to small yeshivas because.
Let's talk practically, because Rabbi Polityko is a Rav that also changes diapers.
What you created with Halacha Berel Chabad is amazing, because
what would ideally Rabbi Polityko's path towards Rabbanos be, if you had to design it?
There are definitely things, I want to be clear, that are for sure Minhagei Chabad. There are not in Sefer Minhagei Chabad. Like, how much halacha do you learn in yeshiva? With half an hour a day, I'll have a Shulchan Aruch. Well, and sorry, that's not acceptable. You need to learn more halacha than that. But we have no time. We're learning Gemara all day. So, Gemara is not a separate thing from halacha. In Mishulovin, the goal should definitely be, again, in my opinion, and it's not really the reality as far as I can tell, or not as far as I can tell from my personal experience. The goal should be.
Why do you think the yeshiva system, not just in Chabad, klal, kind of is the way it is now, where the emphasis is on Svar versus Lasuki Shmaitza? Why do you think it took that
conclusion? And from what I remember in yeshiva, there were bachrim who were. They were shvacher bachrim. They weren't so shaykh to learning, and they also didn't understand. This is not relevant to me. This is not important. I'm never ever going to need to know in my life. What's the svar of Tanakama? What's the svar of Yehuda? And
so you're saying it's not only an eitzah in halacha. This is an eitzah in practical, and you use this during the week as well.
It's a life hack,
so
a lot of times.
Where and how does something become a minhag Chabad? And maybe give like some specific examples of where you think something is a minhag Chabad and something is not a minhag.
To be, even Shana Rishona, the first year they're in koilel, but the koilel is not sustainable because it pays at most $1,000 a month. It is not acceptable.
Welcome to the podcast Ase L'cho Rav. I'm Levi Mishulovin, and together with Rabbi Betzalel Bassman, we bring you conversations with rabbanim and mashpiyim that explore conversations such as Torah, growth, and real life. Enjoy the episode.
In this special conversation with HaRav Berel Polityko, it's auspiciously connected with the publishing of his first Sefer of Shilos and Tshuvos, very, very tremendous accomplishment, as well as his being appointed one of the leading rabbonim of the Bais Hora'ah Chabad that officially launches this week. We get into a lot of very interesting discussion about the nature of Psak, what's the definition of a Talmud Muvok, going through some of his rabbanim that inspire him, an interesting hack on how to change diapers, and a real honest discussion about what goes into writing a tshuva and coming up with an original psak. Hope you enjoy. Good morning, HaRav Polityko.
Good morning.
Every time I try to spell your name, I get in trouble. So that's why even though I often quote you and reference you, so I just felt instead of hearing it cliche, we'll bring Rabbi Polityko Klidishin, so it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be filtered through my grubbe filter. So it's a big schos to have my friend and my mentor, HaRav Polityko, even though he's probably about 10 years younger than me. I have many mentors that are younger than me and older than me, and I have a lot to learn from everyone. And Bez Hashem, we're going to get into HaRav Polityko's background and his growth and so on and so forth. But it's a big schus to HaRav Polityko, who's one of the minds behind many of the halacha and written works at JLI, Choshen Mishpat, creating courses for shluchim around the world, and as well he's one of the rabbonim on the new Bais Hora'ah Chabad, one of the 4 rabbonim that sit and are extremely dedicated, probably most involved from all the Rabbanim, and he recently published a Choshen Sefer that I have the schus to have on my desk over here that we're going to get into. His first Sefer of Responsum, Shilos and Chuvas L'Ish Shalom, and also right before that he was one of the main authors of JLI's new Sefer on Kashrus. They're coming out with one on Shabbos, so he's behind the scenes of a lot. And Bez Hashem, we're going to be able to unveil the curtain a little bit with Hashem's help. So HaRav Polityko.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I actually, to be honest, my workload has gotten a little busy, so I've actually put the Ase L'cho Rav podcast on pause for the last 2 or 3 months. But I'll pi bakashas rabim. I'm attempting to squeeze it into my schedule because I people really want to hear, not from me, but from the people that I'm interviewing and bringing their, I guess, people. The goal of this podcast is really to bring to the forefront people that are really the engines behind our communities, but oftentimes the engines are in the boiler room, so we don't get to see what goes on, and you often hear from more those that have the most followers on their Twitter accounts, not necessarily those that are producing and let's call it the rabbis. So if you can tell us your journey of, where did you go to yeshiva and what inspired you to get involved in halacha?
So I grew up in LA. I went to yeshivas in LA and Sifta and Cheder, and I was in Zal in London. And then in Alitera, Shlichus 770, the regular standard journey. What inspired me to get into halacha? It's hard to say. It's hard to pinpoint it to one exact event or cause, but probably a combination of things. First of all, something I was always interested in, but felt an emphasis on. Definitely picked it up from home from my father. And my upbringing in yeshiva in London, we had very good Chassidishe, who also emphasized a lot learning Lasuka Shmaitza Liba de Hilchasa, not stam to make yeshiva shepil pulim.
Who was that?
So two Chassidishe specifically, Rabbi Gedalia Lieberman, who's I haven't been in touch with him in the last 10 years since I was there, but as far as I know, he's still there and he's active and he's the Rabbi of the community. And Rabbi Levi was the Rabbi Heller. He's originally from Crown Heights. He's a Maggid Shir there, and they both placed a big emphasis on that. And that was,
Rabbi Hertz wasn't teaching, giving shiur when you were there at the time. Rabbi Hertz Senior.
Rabbi Hertz Senior gave a shiur klali, but he wasn't as involved in the day-to-day actively due to his age. He's not. He still needs a refuah shlema. Back then he was more active than what I understand he is now.
I was in London in Samach Vav. Rabbi Hertz also took a similar schnit. He didn't have patience for pull him. He liked to stay focused.
So Rabbi Lieberman is a anical of Rabbi Hertz, and he's also a Talmud of Rabbi Heller. So originally, now now he's also he's a Maggid Shir. So yeah, they've all rubbed off on each other, and it's definitely something that was didn't come out of thin air. But I mean, it comes from Kuntres Chaim. Yeah, that's what you're supposed to learn in yeshivas. But this in yeshiva, that's where there was a big emphasis on that. and so that was that the only contributing factor, the biggest contributing factor? I don't know, but it was probably a contributing factor. It opened my eyes to that possibility. How much of actual properly learning a sugya, la sugya shma'aseh b'dehilchsa, I was matzliach to do at the age of 16? I don't know, but just planting the seeds and knowing that there is such a possibility, that was something that throughout the coming years, when I was involved in other yeshivas and other programs where that wasn't necessarily the emphasis in my mind, that was like, that's how you're supposed to learn. Um, so
Could we dive into that a little bit more?
sure.
You mentioned Kuntres Eitz Chaim, so can you discuss, at least the way you see it, what the Rebbe Rashab guides the Temchet Tmimim to be the structure and the syllabus for at least the Gemara learning, and how you see it in the current system, and what you would recommend, and why do you think there's that gap, or is there a gap?
So I sure. First of all, I want to say I haven't seen it inside in a number of years. So if I quote anything wrong, then please forgive me. But to my recollection, the proper way of learning that the Rabbi Rashab discusses in Kuntres Eitz Chaim, and it's not only the Rabbi Rashab, this is something that was decried by many Gedolei Yisrael, is b'shlila and b'chiyuv. B'shlila against learning in pilpulim, against just stam pilpulim for mental stimulation, which there's definitely a lot of room to do when you're learning Gemara, and Gemara is very intellectually stimulating, and you can make chakiris and pilpulim and the gavran and the chefza and a lot of very interesting, and it's fun, and it's geshmak, but there's no practical halachic takeaway. There's no maskana. Mashenke, in the way that the Rabbi Rashab, and like I said, among other Gedolei Yisrael, emphasize that learning should be done, is to learn Ali b'dehilchasa, la sugya shma'aseh Ali b'dehilchasa, and this is something that I say a lot when this conversation comes up, is that people, especially I speak to younger bachrim, relatives of mine, like, how much halacha do you learn in yeshiva? With half an hour a day, I'll tear Shulchan Aruch. Well, and sorry, that's not acceptable. You need to learn more halacha than that. But we have no time. We're learning Gemara all day. So Gemara is not a separate thing from halacha. You learn so many mesechtes that are, again, all of halacha originally comes from Gemara. Yeah. So you want to say that you're learning ksubis and bava kama. How much of it is practical halacha l'maisa? So first of all, it doesn't really matter, because it's a process of learning how to learn a sugya li b'dehilchasa. So that way, once you know how to do it in bava kama and in ksubis, you can do it anywhere. But second of all, v'hu ha'ikar, that there are a lot of yeshiva shemasechtes, Shabbos and Pesachim for sure, that are very practical halacha l'maisa. And you can learn Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos with Rishonim, with Achronim, and the final thing should be Torah b'seis of Shulchan Aruch, to see how the whole sugya, how the whole Shaklavitari and Gemara comes out. What's the bottom line? What are the shittas? How do we paskin? How's the Alter Rebbe paskin? The fact that that Bachrim go through yeshiva 7 years and they never learn a single Kuntres Achron from the Alter Rebbe, which is all deep pilpulim in the sugyas, starting from the sugyas of the Gemara, and the shittas of Rishonim and shittas of Achronim, depending on which Kuntres Achrons. That's definitely high level learning that could be implemented, in my opinion, at least in yeshiva learning, and there's no reason why not. So, and as it is, you're spending time on learning complicated pilpulim from the Shav Shmaitz and the Shari Yosher and whatever.
But I mean, the current style in yeshivas, I just got working on a kailul for Gemara. I just had a long conversation yesterday with Rabbi Wahlberg.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, he would probably argue, I mean, just I don't want to say play devil's advocate, but even in Chassidus, when it talks about Lumad Torah Be'iyun, I think in Parshas B'chakaisai, so there's Iyun, L'shem Iyun, l'shem connecting to Hashem on the highest level, not having any level of connection to Lamaisa, just svaris al gabi svaris, and the deepest eon possible. And then obviously each level of learning should ultimately come down Lamaisa la suki shmaisa libedilchasa. But can't an argument be made that these are two sides of one coin, and you have to really do the eon l'shem eon and understanding the havamim of the Gemara, even though it has no connection to the Lamaisa, and not just focusing on the kuntras acharins that are connected to something Lamaisadik. And it's not as if the reason I'm learning Masechtas Yevamis is in order that when I learn Masechtas Shabbos, I'll be able to learn it better. But it's Masechtas Yevamis l'shem eon al gabi eon, and that is the Mahus of the yeshiva. And maybe the Rebbe Hashab is saying that just don't forget the end part, that you should also be a Sukkah Shmaitz al Libed Hilchasa.
So to that, I would respond with what the Gemara says in Masechah Shabbos: Legamer inish v'hader l'saver. You first have to learn halachas psukas, and then you could learn svaris. So there's an argument to be made that you should only learn Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and Bechlal not learn Gemara. But obviously, I'm not advocating for that, because the point of yeshiva is also to teach you how to learn. So you have to learn how to learn, but you could be mashal of both things, that they're not a contradiction to each other. That's it's learning aliva the hilchasa is not a contradiction to deep level analytical pilpul style learning, but there are pilpulim that go around in circles in the air, and then there are pilpulim that have an endpoint that eventually land somewhere. And I think that's again, to my understanding, that's what the Rebbe Hashab was advocating for, that the pilpul should have a maskana. And the fact is that we see the results. Bachrim and Galite, and I'm speaking about myself, learn in yeshiva for many, many years, and they learn a lot of nice sugyas, but they come out and they don't have the halacha l'maisa. And the fact is that you have to have the halacha l'maisa. You have to know how to live like a yid. And this is besides even the Rashad, this is hilchas Talmud Torah. Yeah, you have to first know halacha l'maisa, halachas psukis, and then you could learn all the everything else. Torah is endless.
The podcast Ase L'cho Rav is brought to you by Merkos Torah. A new service of Merkos Torah is Bais Hora'ah Chabad. Call or WhatsApp Bais Hora'ah Chabad with any shiloh you have and get a quick response. WhatsApp or call 347-688-7917 between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. EST Dares. Try this free service today. Call or WhatsApp 347-688-7917. For more information, go to BaisHora'ahChabad.com.
Is it possible that if you don't, or not if it's possible, I did an interview with HaRav maybe a year ago, and I got pushback from the Rosh Hashivas that they were advocating, similarly, that there needs to be more of a focus on the Sukkah Shmaitza Libed Hilchasa, and they made the point along the lines of what you were just saying, but with a little bit of a different twist, that in order to properly, it's almost like in order to learn how to run a marathon is 26 miles, so you have to first learn how to crawl and walk, and there's different skills. So skill number one is learning how to learn a Gemara, and then you kind of build that skill properly, and then ultimately, again, and this is where this is still missing, the gap is then to learn how to learn the Gemara even better, and then be able to take it to the Lamaisa. But if you you jump right away through, let's say, learning one line in the Gemara and going straight to the rush and the tour, you might really lack that ability to learn how to process information. And we're going to get Mitzvah Shem to some of the tshuvas and Li Sholem to learn how to. It could be you wouldn't have been such a great analyst of a halachic sugya if you didn't spend 8 years in yeshiva just learning how to kvetch a taisvis and Rabbi Kiveger.
Okay, so there are two things. First of all, I agree that you have to learn how to crawl before you learn how to walk. So I'm not really talking about Mesivta. And in Mesivta, the goal should definitely be, again, in my opinion, and it's not really the reality as far as I can tell, or not as far as I can tell from my personal experience, um, that the goal should be skill building. Meaning, I don't really understand Bichlal why there's a Girsa Seder in Mesivta. How can you have a Girsa Seder? The whole point of a Girsa Seder is to cover ground when you don't know how to read Gemara. So, young Bachrim, 13, 14 years old, they sit in a Girsa Seder for hours and hours and hours, and they bullshit because they don't know what to do. Learn Gemara for 2 hours. They don't know how. So the options are either don't learn or read it with an art scroll, which neither of which are I'm not sure which one's worse. So you're not gaining any skills by reading with an art scroll. So you definitely have the skills in order to be able to read Gemara, to read and understand Gemara, Rashi, Ataisfes, and so on. I'm talking about in Zal, in the higher Shiurim, when already, ostensibly supposed to already know how to read Gemara, Rashi, Taisis by yourself, and now you're learning Le'iyu, and you're learning Svaris and Achreinim. Then this is what I'm saying. Instead of you're anyway learning. You're anyway having complicated pilpul shiurim in achreinim with the svaris and the gavra and the chefza. Instead of that, which is very good, and there's a time and place for that as well. But to learn instead a kuntres achron from the Alter Rebbe, to see how the Alter Rebbe takes a sugi in the Gemara and paskins halacha l'maisa, or something else. It doesn't have to be kuntres achrons are very hard. I understand. Something else. It's a little bit more, to see the same pilpul style, but how it's again aliba de hilchasa and not stam svaris.
It is what? Why do you think the yeshiva system, not just in Chabad, but Bichlal, kind of is the way it is now, where the emphasis is on Svar versus Lasuki Shmaitza? Why do you think it took that turn?
Because it's more geschmack. It's more fun. It sounds a little grub, and could be I'm wrong, but I think that's the reason, and it's understandable. I'm not.
Is there validity to that argument? In other words, if at the end of the day we want people to, let's just say, back in the day, it was more like going to yeshiva versus going to university. But like today, it's maybe going to yeshiva versus sitting in front of your Netflix. So don't we want to make it fun and exciting? In other words, is it possible? I'm just trying to see the other side. If taka the learning is more enjoyable this way, then maybe that's a strong argument.
So then I have to modify my statement when I said it's more enjoyable. It's perceived as more enjoyable. In other words, learning halacha could learning not a halacha but aliba de hilchasa could also be extremely enjoyable and extremely geschmack and adarabah. It's more satisfying when you have a satisfying conclusion. And from what I remember in yeshiva, there were bachrim who were shvacher bachrim. They weren't so shaykh to learning, and they also didn't understand this is not relevant to me. This is not important. I'm never ever going to need to know in my life. Hamachlef para b'chamer. What's the svar of Tanakama? What's the svar of Yehuda? And what's the this is but when you learn Aliva de Hilchasa, and I saw it in London when they at one point, it's a small yeshiva, which is it's a separate topic, but I think everyone should go to small yeshivas. Because when you have a small yeshivas, the Magidishir, they see what's going on, where everyone's holding, what does the yeshiva need? It's supposed to a factory that's just running, and if you fall off the train, you fall off, and that's it. So there was a certain point in the yeshiva where there was a small group, and there were a lot of bachrim who were not connecting to Bava Basra, to Yesh Neichlin, or to whatever it was. So they opened up a separate shir, and they're learning psachim, Arvi psachim, Ali b'de Hilchasa, Kiddush and Avdallah. And like the bachrim who were not connecting to Bava Basra, they lit up because it's so much. It's something it's relevant to me. It's practical to me. There's a satisfying. There's a conclusion. I understand. It's actually much more geschmack to learn Ali b'de Hilchasa, and much more enjoyable and much more satisfying. but it's not perceived that way for whatever reason. So
let me push back a little bit on just from my experience with different types of minds and different styles of learning. So, Baruch Hashem, we have, and you were part of it, and now you're becoming a Shaylo Meshav in Kail Rabbi Chabad and Kail Hilchos Nida. So there's a lot of people that really enjoy learning halacha and halacha to Beis Yosef, and the way I view it is like this is like community Rav style learning, putting in 8 to 10 hours a week. The way we've discussed this in the past, Pesach level learning, that's 20, 30 hours a week, even more, getting more involved in the Rishonim and so on. But I've had a handful of great minds, let's say, certain types of iluyim that told me that, they joined Kail Rabbi Chabad and it didn't hit the spot. It was not, the learning was too dry. They were looking for more lumdus, and they almost said like, well, even in Kail Laim Deidach, that's like there's a lot of lumdus there, in terms of svaras and chilukim and higoyin. Whereas if you wanna get to the lumdus of the halacha, like it's going to be a much longer journey, and it's a lot harder to ascertain the lumdus in Yedadeya than it is in Choshen Mishpat and in other areas like that. And Chassidishe will tell you this. So I'm thinking of those those yichidim. I agree with you that for the Hamoinam, Arvei Psachim actually would at the end of the day be more enjoyable. But there is something to this like lumdus that like gets a certain type of mind that like wouldn't chap them with the lumdus of halacha.
I don't even know what to say to that. It's just so to say that there's no geshmak lumdus in Yeridea and in Hilchos Nida befrat, which Hilchos Nida, it's hard to think of another area of halacha, maybe Hilchos Shabbos, that has such an ocean of svarim, of chuvis, of pilpulim, of chakiris. It's just mayim she'en lahem soif. So this is not all halachas psukas. This is lamdas. This is pilpulim. There's so much. Whatever. If you want it handed to you on a silver platter by Kail Rabbi Chabad to say, learn, listen, this is for lamdas. Okay, it could be that as Kail Rabbi Chabad, as a program for Halacha L'Maisa, was focusing more on Ma'ir Mekaymis that were more relevant to Halacha L'Maisa. Although to my recollection, Kail Rabbi Chabad gave out a lot of Geshmak Ma'ir Mekaymis as well. But so I don't remember that from my experience from Kail Rabbi Chabad. But even without that, it's it's a free country. You could go, and not to mention that we have almost about half of Hilchos Nida from the Alter Rebbe, long country sacharins and Madar Basras, and there's a lot of very geshmak alumnus over there, and it takes a lot of breaking your head to understand it. It's not easy. So
I get your point. What I would say is that I think there's like the engineering type minds that there's different styles of lumdus. There's like engineering type lumdus, lahavdil from the that type of left brain lumdus and right brain lumdus. I think an argument could be made that that the left brain lumdus of Siman Kuf Tzadik is a lot harder to give over to a 17-year-old than Arba Avis Nezikin and some fun Hakira about Tamaitzi Mechaveri Al Varaya. It's almost like I can come and I can try to take you to a $200 a plate restaurant and try to get the 15-year-old boy to appreciate the caviar that's chves, but like most guys aren't gonna like go for that. They're gonna want a basic hamburger. So I'm just kind of being malamed, not malamed schos. I'm just trying to like. It's almost like I always tell people, like, if you're not in the world of chinuch, if you're not teaching 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, you're not allowed to give opinions. So it's like, if you want to change the chinuch system, go become a rebbe in 10th grade. But I'm just I taught for 4 years in Mesivta and whatever. I'm not teaching there anymore, so I don't know what that tells you. But it's easy to preach, but it's much easier to serve hamburgers than to serve caviar to the 16-year-olds.
Look, there's no one size fits all thing for anyone, and that's why, like I said, everyone should go to small yeshivas, because you have a much better chance of getting a tailored guidance from your Magid Ashir, from your Rebbeim, in a small yeshiva as opposed to a yeshiva with 400 bachar. But yeah, they're definitely different strokes for different folks, and not everybody's going to connect to the same thing, and that's true. But I think that I believe very strongly, and it's not just a belief, I can prove it, that there are the same yeshivish style pilpulim and chakiris you can have in halacha, and it could be geshmak, and it could be fun and enjoyable, and yeah, that's
it's Stam, just to be Messiah this part of the conversation. We're recently learning Hilchis Tzedakah and Smichas Chaver, and the Paiskim were talking out, like, at what point is the Talmud self-sufficient to be able to learn on his own, where the father could kilu mikad adin count it towards meiser. It's no longer a chiyuv. So they were saying, like, kind of like Zal age. Once you enter Zal, you can then learn on your own. And some of the guys were pushing back. Well, it could be, we need to push it to smicha, to 20, to 30. Anyway, it was like an interesting halachic nafkamina as to like when we consider someone to have the tools to learn on his own.
Yeah.
Here is what one user of Bais Hora'ah Chabad said. I just started asking all my questions, and it has been the best thing ever. I used to message Rabbonim privately, and I felt bad. It used to take them a long time to get back to me. And every question, I had to think twice, should I ask? In 10 minutes, I get a response, and I don't have to think if this is a silly question or not. You can ask whatever question you want. I even shared the contact information with my high school daughter, and she's been asking questions, which is amazing. This is making it easier for people to follow halacha. Follow what you're supposed to be doing, because it's making it so easy to contact a Rav. Try this free service today. Call or WhatsApp 347-688-7917. For more information, go to BaisHora'ahChabad.com.
You mentioned to me recently in a shiloh that I was working through with you that, and I hope you're okay with me quoting this private conversation publicly.
I don't know yet what you're going to say.
That Rabbi Brian is a Tano Polig in terms of the way he learns in Alter Rebbe. It's hard to argue with Rabbi Brian. So can you talk to Rabbi Brian and his influence on your learning, at least from his Mar Mekaimis and his website, and how you often speak very, very highly of him?
That's true. I do. It's like this. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, and he was saying that whatever, he was giving me some constructive criticism about how I'm not always on the spall from certain rabbanim, certain achreinim, later achreinim, which I admitted guilty as charged. And I said that I don't think, when you learn a sugya, aliba de hilchasa, and you come to a certain maskana, you're entitled to paskin that way. You're not just because there's a Rav who's bigger than you and older than you and with a longer, wider beard, who you may respect very much, who paskins differently, okay, you're not like sakir upon Mishpat. There's no ein lefanav lemasipanav lemakach sheichet. There's no masipanim in Allah. Of course, it doesn't mean that every single person can go and decide for themselves what they think the halacha should be, and then pass in that way. And there's a reason we have rabbanim, and we have a system, and you have to have mikveh and shimush. But once you're qualified, and you're qualified because rabbanim, experienced rabbanim, have given you, so heter hayra, as it's called, and it's called that for a reason, because not everybody should be doing it. Then you're 100% entitled. So he asked me, where did you get this mahalach? So I said, I never really got this mahalach from, like Moshe Kibbutz Torah Messina Masarli Yeshua, like somebody gave it to me. But the way it developed was that I would learn a sugya, and I would, let's say I was looking at a certain shaila, or I was chal, learning because I was learning, and I tried to learn a little bit of Hilchasa, and I came out by me a certain way, and I knew that there were other Rabbanim who said differently, or there it says differently in contemporary Achreinim. So, in the beginning, I always thought I must be crazy. I must have been the one who learned wrong. I must have made a mistake somewhere. But then I would discuss it with other Rabbanim, and they would say, "Yeah, you're right," or "You have a point. Not everyone passes that way, but there are some who do, and you're onto something." And once that happened, many, many times, so I realized that I'm not the crazy one. But there, klal, and I want to clarify what that means. That there's in halacha, there's in many shilas, especially common shilas, there's a certain psak that's mainstream. And there's other opinions among Rabbanim that are not necessarily mainstream, but they're acceptable according to halacha. They make sense, whether l'chomer or l'kola, but that's not necessarily mainstream. And then there are things that are completely beyond the pale. I'm not talking about things that are completely beyond the pale. If you're the only one who's driving in the right way on the highway, and everyone else is driving in the wrong direction, so you really have to ask yourself why you're the only one who's driving in the right direction. So I'm not talking about those things at all. I'm talking about something where if I learn something and come to a certain maskana and see that's not necessarily the mainstream psak, but there are others who pass in this way. So okay, that's I understand. That's the maskana that I came to, and that's what makes sense according to the sugya. So what began to happen is that when certain shilas that I look around and I see who paskins like this and who paskins like that, and many times that I would find that the only person who wrote who was to the point, who was without getting carried away or worried about. I'm trying to figure out how to articulate it properly, but the only person who was on the ball time and time again is Rabbi Brian, and he has an incredible website with 50,000 shilos on it, and a lot of the shilos have long tshuvos where he explains the maskanas and the tzadim and how it comes to maskanas, and I see that I mean the way of learning and the way of paskening, I learned so much, even though I was never zeicha to learn by him in the standard traditional Talmud Rabbi format. It was mostly from Bechsav, from the website, and from a handful of conversations that I have had with him in person, but mostly from the website. I learned so much from reading there. So, a lot of shimush in there also, because it's practical halachas. I said, yeah, but by me, it says Kamatanu Polik, because when I don't look first over there on the website to see how Rabbi Brain Paskins, and then I first learn, and then I come and I see it, and again every single time, this time Rabbi Brain is the only one who says things that, in my opinion, make sense.
Well, I mean, just to understand that a little bit better, um, like I've heard Rabbanim say, I have the Igros Moshe, I have the Shevet HaLevi, I have, even the Mishnah Halachas, like from 40 years ago. I don't need anything from the last 30, 40 years. I don't need anything from the 21st century. I have. So I'm curious why you see like Rabbi Brian's analysis being more helpful than reading a tshuva from the Gedolim from the previous generation.
So there. First of all, I want to say a very, very simple answer is that Brian is a Rav who is particularly concerned with the Alter Rebbe Shitta on any given um, on a given shaila. So I can look in Igros Moshe and I can look in Mishnah Halachos, and they might sometimes quote the Alter Rebbe, but they're not worried about being mevayer, first of all, what the Alter Rebbe Shitta actually is, and number two, about paskening like the Alter Rebbe. So that's a whereas Rabbi Brian, obviously, that is Ase L'cho Rav, that's his goal. That's number one. And number two, I want to say names and compare specific people, but even from the chuvas of Achreinim who are considered from the Gedolei HaPesachim of the last day, I read their chuvas and I don't feel any amount of confidence in relying on it because there are certain Achreinim who I can, the structure of all the chuvas is the same. Hagam Shebeshulchan Aruch, it says like this: Mikol Makim mistaber that it's mutter. So you could be mekel in derisis because even though in Shulchan Aruch it says it's aser, but I can say misvara that this case is mutter. Okay, that doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies.
Can you give a classical example, maybe from Simon Chav Hey, about wipes on Shabbos? Or I didn't want to get into that one because it's a little bit too under the belt, as they say. But I like give me we can talk open to, in other words, so walk me through an example of something where there was let's just say a common psak, and Rabbi Polityko learned the sugya differently, and then suddenly Rabbi Brian, let's just say, was simpatico in your thinking.
I'll give you a different example from the Sefer.
Oh, thank you for not doing the wipes one. I use wipes with a shinoi like Rabbi Heller with my left hand, and please don't convince me otherwise.
I'll say the kitzer about the wipes is that you mentioned that we're working now in JLI. We're fit, the writing is finished, but it's now in the process of layout and design, and hopefully it'll be ready to go to print within the next few months. The second volume in the Living Jewish series on keeping Shabbos. So that Sefer, the Living Jewish, that's right, that's the one in Kashrus, and now we're working on Shabbos. So the Living Jewish series,
actually a gorgeous Sefer, close to 600 pages. I would highly recommend it. Yashikayach, Rabbi, the whole JLI team, and Rabbi Mintz, V'chulu, Yashikayach.
Yeah, it is. If I may say so myself, it is a beautiful Sefer, and I would recommend it. And it's not just for JLI Chabad House Makaravim. It's from people can definitely benefit from it as well. And Baruch Hashem, we've gotten a lot of amazing feedback. So the Living Jewish series is not a likut of Piskei Halachos of Berel Polityko's opinion or of any other Rav. It's a sefer, even though we have Rabbanim who review the sefer, but the sefer doesn't necessarily record the opinions in halacha, which every Rav should have their own opinion of Rabbi Mordechai Farkash, who reviewed the first sefer, Rabbi Yaakov Goldstein, who reviewed the sefer in Shabbos. It's a sefer for Klal Yisrael. So as a sefer for Klal Yisrael, I tried to write what's the mainstream accepted psak, even if I didn't necessarily always agree with it when I came to, in my own personal.
Wait a second. If it's wrong in your opinion, then it's wrong. How can you endorse it?
Oh, so very good. So first of all, if there's something that I think is pasha wrong, then I'm not going to endorse it. But there are certain things where I think that it makes more sense to be machmer, or that I think it makes more sense to be mekel. But Rafael, I understand where the other side is coming from, and that's what's accepted. So I'm not coming to make chidushim. Like I said, it's a safer for Klal Yisrael. When it comes to baby wipes, even though, like you said, the whole world uses baby wipes on Shabbos. So first of all, in my opinion, it's a shaila of their Ase. So I don't understand how you could be mekel. But also, there's even though there is who to rely on, and I understand the words that they're saying to be miyashevit. I don't really understand how it works. But there's such a simple eitzah. There's such a simple eitzah to use a spray bottle that takes care of kemat all the shilas. So I did write it in the sefer. That there's such an easy eitzah. Whatever. I'm not coming to tell anybody what to do. Just
wait. So let's talk practically, because Rabbi Polityko is a Rav that also changes diapers. So he has experience from that side. So have you? So during the week you use wipes, and on Shabbos you use the spray bottle.
Actually, my wife started using the spray bottle during the week also.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it even easier than wipes?
It's 100% easier. Just it's begashmi. It's easier because even during the week. So you on a life hack.
You spray the baby's bottom.
You fill up a spray bottle with soapy water. You fill up a spray bottle with soapy water, and then you first spray the area, and then you could even use wipes. You could even use wipes, because at that point you don't need the liquid that's below on the wipes. It's completely not negate to you.
Do you use wipes at that point?
Yeah.
Do you use wipes once you use the spray bottle?
Yeah, I spray first and then I use wipes.
Right. So you're saying it's not only an eitzah in halacha. This is an eitzah in practical, and you use this during the week as well.
It's a life hack. Yeah, a lot of times. That's
okay.
So
this is why you're paid the big bucks, right?
That's Rabbi. I heard once from Rabbi Gedalia Oberlander, who said V'shem, I think it was Moshe Neishlas, who was the previous Rav of New Square. He said about Ingrid Shiravanim that we don't only paskin halachos, we also give good eitzes. So I tried to.
Hey, if you're listening right now and you've been feeling stuck, like you're running in circles or living on autopilot, I want to invite you to something different. I call it coaching out of the matrix, and it's about breaking free from the patterns, fears, and false limits that break you from living fully as the person God created you to be. My approach is holistic. We work on mindset, emotions, physical well-being, and a deeper spiritual identity, so the change lasts. And here's the twist. You only pay if you're satisfied with the session, because I believe in results, not hype. If you're ready for a shift, email me at leviholisticcoach@gmail.com and let's see what opens up for you. That's leviholisticcoach@gmail.com. Coaching out of the matrix. Your new chapter starts right here. Enjoy the rest of the video.
On that note, it's actually interesting. And I'd like to talk about your shimush under Rabbi Oberlander and the Debit Tziner, but I'm just reminded of two things from the Debit Tziner. One is, I guess we'll get to this a little more. I want to dig a little deeper into this analysis of yours, but the Debit Tziner was talking about Mesoida. Even though like the example he gave from the Shiurim was in the Shiurim Tekel Rabbanan Chabad, we learned Tfilas Kelim. So he said, logically, you don't need a toivel plastic, but I have a Mesoida from my Zayda. From the Tziner to toivel plastic, so we toivel plastic, and that's what I do. So I'm not exactly seeing that. Kilu, in other words, you seem to be negating that type of style. Do you? I'll give you another example. Rabbi Zimmerman, the Av Bezdin in London, he gave a shir to Rabbanan Chabad about different types of psak, and he said there's, he was learning by a Rav in Skver, and he would only, in Skver, they would only give a psak if he could find some kadmon from 50 or 100 years ago that said something similar, and he would look and look. He would spend 3 hours trying to find something. And then he went to some Reuven Feinstein, and he's like, he totally negated, like, what do you need this psak from 75 years ago? So are there like two schools of thought here?
So first of all, you said two different things, and there are two schools of thought. But the first thing that you said about Messiah is very important. There is Al Titish Teres Imecha. I'm not negating that at all, but it has to be a real Messiah, a real. If you're makabel a certain to pass in a certain way, you can definitely pass in that way, even if you personally feel differently or you feel it makes no sense, because that's how you're makabel. And like I said, Al Titish Teres Imecha. But the thing is that nowadays we don't have that as much. We don't have, especially in Lubavitch, we don't have the old-fashioned type of shimush where you would go to a Rav and you would sit by him for 10 years and you would learn everything. Unfortunately, that's just not the reality. So whatever you were makabel. But when people say that, oh, Lubavitcher Rabbanim in Russia pass in a certain way, so therefore this is the Lubavitcher Messiah, I I I think that's nonsense. First of all, I don't know how we can know for sure Bechlal who Paskin, and there's no Lubavitcher Messiah in Psak. I'm just gonna say it. There are certain things. If you were makabel from your Rebbe a certain way, then yeah. But there is a certain thing that there was. I don't think there is such a thing. Regarding in general, two schools of thought. So yeah, you can open up the Chuvas of Ramesha Feinstein and open up the Chuvas of Rav Yosef and put them side by side, and you'll see two completely different schools of thought. It's your Moshe who Kamat never quotes Achreinim. He speaks of Rishonim and Gemara Ashitaisis and Rishonim and Shulchan Aruch. And Rav Avadia, who the Tshuva, he quotes 250 Achreinim from the called Divrei Yemei Yisrael, and they're both B'derech Klal. It's considered the difference in approach between Ashkenazish Poskim and Sfaradish Poskim. And if I remember correctly, in the Hakdama to the Shut Rav Pa'alim from the Ben Ish Chai, he writes about this, and he very much is in support of the Sfaradish way of paskening. And the truth is that if you look in the Halacha Sfarim from our Rebbeim, they definitely were mischashiv. The Alter Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek were mischashiv with Achreinim from their der and from the der before, and it wasn't only Gemara, Rashi, and Rishonim. The Alter Rebbe is very busy all the time with the Taz and the Magen Avraham, the Pri Chodesh and Chacham Tzvi, and Tzemach Tzedek with Chassam Sofer and Chavaz Das and Siddur Torah. I mean, these are and the Gra. These are Achreinim who lived in the same generation, Tzemach Tzedek generation before. So yeah, it's two different schools of thought. I'm not advocating for not looking in Achreinim at all, because even if you think that school of thought is better, the fact is that I'm not Moshe Feinstein. I don't know anyone else who is on that level. And the fact is that I don't trust myself that when I learn the Sugya, Gemara and Shulchan Aruch, that I have the ability to then translate that, to bring that Lamata Masar Tvacham Halacha L'Maisa, and to be Mechaven Emes, and not to make mistakes. So therefore, then after you learn, then again, my opinion, my approach, what I try to do is that then you go look in Achreinim from the last generation, in the Igros Moshe, the Ber Moshe, the Mishnah Halachos, and the Shevet Halevi, and everyone else, and see how they take a paskend. And if you learn properly, you will find inevitably that you did come to the right maskana. But sometimes you find that you made a mistake, and that's fine. But a lot of times, most times, you will find that there were certain achreinim, certain paiskim from the last there who came to the same maskana as you, and sometimes you'll find and you'll find others who didn't. So if I learned the sugya and I came to certain maskana, and then I open up and I see that No, Igros Moshe, he doesn't pass in this way, but Shevet Halevi does pass in this way. So okay, so that means I definitely didn't learn wrong. Yeah, if Rav Wosner learned the sugya and he came to the same askana, so Mustama, I'm not way off. There are others who pass differently. Okay, that's fine. That's kachidar kashalter. So, did I answer your questions?
Yeah. I mean, let's go back to your comment about Lubavitch. Not because it's controversial, but because I think some of the listeners might want me to push back a little bit. Let me start with let's start with the Rebbe, for example. Do we have any inference from the Rebbe in terms of, like, the Rebbe had a strong, let's say, Kabbalah soul to what Rabbanim said. Sometimes even if maybe he, might have felt otherwise or this and that, but like always ask the local Rav, do what the local Rav says. And, he turned very much to Zalman Shimon Dvorkin and to others, and they're your statement that Lubavitch doesn't have a Messiah because people don't necessarily sit by Rav for lengthy periods of time. So I guess my question would be, what if a community has established a certain minhag? At what point do we refer to it as a Lubavitcher minhag? In other words, let's say, for example, there's the statement you said. In other words, I don't know if everyone would agree with what you said. Some would say,
I know people will disagree. That's I'm not trying to make any friends here.
The question is, when something considered a communal minhag. I know that Rebbe really took the idea of minhag Chabad to a whole new level than it was in the previous door. So where and how does something become a minhag Chabad? And maybe give some specific examples of where you think something is a minhag Chabad and something is not a minhag Chabad.
So there is, okay. It's a very good question. It's a very important point. So first, let me explain my statement that there's no Messiah in Psak. When we have Shmuas from Ziknei Rabbani Anash, from the last generation, that they pass in a certain way, I don't believe that creates an official Messiah Psak in Chabad. And the reason is...
Could you give a concrete example or two?
Not making a brach until it's kelim, let's say. Or... if I think of another example, I'll share. Why? But why do I say that? Because the Rabbanim from the last day, they were Rabbanim. They had the Mitzias and Shilas that came to them, and they passed in a certain way. They didn't pass in a certain way because that was the Messiah. They passed in a certain way because that's the maskana that they came to. It doesn't make that every other Lubavitcher Rav L'Deris is Meshubah to that psak. That's just like I said, kachidar kashalter.
What about, let's say, for example, there's a rumor in Lubavitch they didn't eat garlic on Pesach. So so what would you do with that?
As far as I
know Lamashal, there's a Rav in London. I think he's, at least I've heard it in Shirim in the past, he's like, you could eat garlic. There's no good source for this, but many would say you can't.
So now we're moving on to something else. Minhagi Chabad. So minhagim are definitely extremely important, but it's important to know what's a real minhag, not to make up new minhagim. Lo yisifu pen sigru. We have, first of all, Sefer Minhagim Chabad. There are a lot of things that we know are not in Sefer Minhagim Chabad. That's a fact. That's I believe the Rabbi said this clearly, that there were things that didn't make it in for whatever reason. And there are definitely things, I want to be clear, that are for sure Minhagim Chabad that are not in Sefer Minhagim Chabad.
Could you give an example if that's possible? I was speaking to your someone that you did shimmish under very very long Rabbi Oberlander when I interviewed him. So I asked him about having a Lubavitch or shchita, and versus some other good quality shchita, and he didn't feel that was a binding minhag Chabad, or that was that super. So I like. Could we use that as an example? I know that's very near and dear. I was just speaking to a Lubavitcher Sheikhet here in Pittsburgh, Rabbi Darren. He said I can quote him on it. He said he was making fun of the concept of. He's like, as long as you have a good shchita, he's a Sheikhet himself. He works for Rabashkins, so agri, whatever it is now, agri processors. So like this is something that many people would feel very, very strongly of, because the Rebbe told Rabbi Hendel something by Yechidus about Shchidus Lubavitch. I'm not giving my personal opinion. Like,
yeah, I'd
rather could we use concrete examples?
So there are. I'm scared to say concrete examples, and also because I'm on the spot, I'm blanking out, obviously. But there are different. There are minhagim that are recorded, either in Sefer Minhagim Chabad, or in letters of the Rebbe, or in sichos, things like that. Those we know for sure are minhagi Chabad. There's no question. And then there are minhagi Chabad that you can paik chazi. This is a minig. Once a minig is neskavel, b'poil, it's al pi halacha, it becomes a serious shaila whether you could just throw it out the window. But then there are minhagim that are based on nothing, on shmuas. This guy said this and that, b'shem the Rebbe. There's nothing. There's no source for it, and it's not niskabel. So when people say it's minhag Chabad to tevel plastic, there's no source for this. I know plenty of Lubavitchers who don't tevel plastic, and the important point here is that there's a perception that we have a different Torah in Chabad than the rest of Klal Yisrael, and therefore every single thing is this minhag Chabad, and there's a lot of things that people, is this minhag Chabad? That's not minhag Chabad. It's a minhag Yisrael. Why are we worse than the rest of every single year on the WhatsApp groups and everything else? Shlisel challah. Is it minhag Chabad to make shlisel challah? Is there any official record of it being a minhag Chabad? No. It's a minhag Yisrael. So, v'kohen Ravis. Was it something else?
Hey, are you looking for top talent without the crazy costs? Well, you're in good luck, because I'm working advising at Talent Sam. They help companies hire amazing people from South Africa for roles like customer success, finance, operations, marketing, and sales. All and more at around 70% less than Western employee cost. They can find the right person in days with no recruitment fee, and they handle all HR, tech, and compliance. If that sounds like something you or someone you know could use, let me know and I'll connect you. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the video.
Go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt. I want to go back to what you were saying earlier. About, let's say in Lubavitch, people don't sit under a Rav for many, many, many years. And therefore there's no, people don't have as much of a set Messiah. I mean, let's say Ledugma, you sat under the Betzalel Rav for 5 years. You did Shimmish, right? Maybe you will.
Not quite, but yeah.
So it almost sounds like the Betzalel, he had from his Zayda this Messiah about plastic. At what point would you say, I'm a Talmud of the Betzalel Rav, and therefore, just like he says, even though he doesn't understand, I'm gonna not say a bracha on Tfilas Kalim. That's the din, and therefore I'm not going to say a bracha, even though I disagree with it. I mean, so it's almost like this is the chiddush of my Rebbe. Like we have by onions, by the opinion of the Alter Rebbe with by Karpas and the Gemara Chizda with the Hadassim. So at what point would I say this is I'm a Talmud Muvak of this person, and I'm going to follow him liminal l'smo?
So again, I think the whole concept of a Talmud Muvak, we don't really have. The Talmud Muvak in the halachic sense. How far am I going to take something that I was makabel? It really depends. Depends on the case. Depends on the situation. I never thought about it. I've thought about it plenty, but I've never thought about how to articulate exactly what the klalim are. So I can't really give you a definitive answer, but it really depends on what it is. There are certain things that have to come by Kabbalah, um, that you can't. There's no other way. There's no other way to learn. There are certain shilas that have no achra. There's no. It's machlekas aveskim. There's no achra. So how do you paskin? Somebody comes to ask a shayta, it's a machlekes. And that's, you can play it safe, but that's not a very good answer for somebody who's asking who wants to know what to do. So you're makabel from your Rebbeim out to paskin, and there's things that I ask all the time when when I see there's no clear achara, there's no clear maskana. I ask all the rabbanim, how do we paskin on this? That's something that has to be done. And then there are things that there is a clear achra, but some people have a family minig or a community minig otherwise. So definitely the minig of one family is not binding on another family. One community is not binding on another community. And like I said, we have to be very careful with adding new things because there's like I said, lo sifu pen sigru. It's not a theoretical concern. Chumer dasel de kula. It's a fact that happens. It's meisim b'chol yom. That new chumers come to kulas. So it's have to be careful with these things. And when we say that something is a minhag Chabad, we have to be sure that it's a minhag Chabad based on, is it something there's an official record of it being a minhag Chabad somewhere, or is it at least that's the minhag b'poil. If something is a minhag b'poil, so that's the minhag. But something is not this and not that. It's hard to say that it's a minhag Chabad, and there are people who are interested in making out of every single thing. It isn't in Chabad. It's not in Chabad, and it just the fact is that there is a middle ground. There is a gray area of certain things they're not min Chabad, but they're min Yisrael, or there's a min Yisrael, but they're lavdaf gets min Chabad. There is nuance.
Right. So let's just change gears a little bit as we're going to wrap this up. We'll have to have a part 2 and a part 3 to get to the rest of the things I wanted to discuss. Don't want to take the Rav's precious time anymore. So normally we train. Let's just say I heard this from Chevra in Lakewood. So Lakewood in the 70s and 80s realized that they have a problem with they have a shortage of rabbanim. So they look to other communities to learn how to fill that gap. And between the 80, over the last 40 years, they've really been able to grow in the department of Halacha L'maisa and proper limud Halacha. So I'd say the mainstream, let's just say modern way of creating a Rav, I don't know if it was like this 100 years ago, but maybe it was. In today's world of distractions, someone sits in Koilo long term and he becomes a Rav. And then he becomes a Rav, and then he continues learning half a day and he's answering shilas and someone's supporting him. As of yet, in Lubavitch, we don't have such a model. So therefore, we created what I felt was an okay b'diavad model of Koilel Rabbanei Chabad, where people have their day job, but they're sitting in a kvias of sitting and learning 10 hours a day, 10 hours a week, halacha l'maisa, and if they do this for the rest of their life, at least they're going to be in that world of halacha, but they didn't really do the full McCoy. So is there the model that Lubavitch has, where even our advanced scholars get jobs like yourself in JLI, and you're learning on the side, and growing into rabbanos, is that an acceptable model for creating poskim, or maybe that are there advantages to that model? Because I mean, you got a call from Lakewood, they have 6,000 guys learning in Koilol for 10 years. It's a $60 million budget. I guess I'm just like, what is, if you had to advise Lubavitch in terms of upgrading our agenda, like what would ideally Rabbi Politiko's path towards Rabbanos be, if you had to design it?
First of all, I want to say that yeah, what you created with Kol Rabbanei Chabad is amazing because it's mamish incredible because compared to what was before, what existed before, which was nothing, it's a huge improvement. Now, is it ideal? Is it an ideal solution? No, it's not. Is it ideal for younger light who are interested in learning halacha and getting shemush and whatever, whether with the goal of practical or rabbanos or not, for them to be working on the side? No, it's not ideal. It's something that ideally you should have 24 hours a day with no distractions to be able to do it. And in the Welt, like you said, they do it, and there's funding for that. And you can light sit in Koilo for 10, 15 years, and and they learn. So for somebody to be having to work or to be, even Shana Rishona, the first year they're in Koilo, but the Koilo is not sustainable because it pays at most $1,000 a month, is is not acceptable. And like I said, the results are all around us. The proof is in the pudding. So, what would my ideal world be? Ideal world would be that that we have the proper infrastructure like they have in other communities for younger life to sit in Kailul, not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but for 10 years, and for it to be sustainable in a way that it's a person could live with three, four, five, six kids, um, and for them to be able to learn properly, and then and to have proper rabbanim to learn from. Um, and again, you learn practically for many years under a Rav. Then you're talking makabel, a certain way of paskening, a certain mesiris. That's the good old-fashioned way. That's that would be my
You
ideal.
you would still advocate for a long-term koilo in Crown, like is the best place to do that in Crown Heights, like where things are so expensive, or to find some sort of like is the koilo in New Haven, for example, is the only and Ray Fisher's koilo essentially creating a model where those chavre can do that for another 7 years besides just for 3 years? Is that like you're saying take the mahala that they have, but just add 7 years to it?
Yeah, it doesn't. And I don't know the mamish, but Pratius what exactly they do, but I know that yeah, they definitely those two koilos that you mentioned have a system where Yungalite are able to stay there for longer than in the standard koilo, and they're able to be supported a little bit better. Um, yeah, it doesn't have to be specifically in Crown Heights. It has to be in a place in a place where it works, whatever it takes to make it work. It's a crisis, and it needs to be whatever. If it can't be in Crown Heights, then it'll be somewhere else.
Okay, this has been a very geschmacky conversation. I just want to conclude with one question. What would be your definition of a Chassidishe Rav?
I'm happy you're asking me that question because I want to emphasize some of my statements earlier we're not meant chas v'shalom to be mezalzel in anything and in a certain way of paskening. And like I said, Messiah is extremely important. Minhagim are extremely important. It has to be. It has to be. There's no. There are certain rabbanim today in the world, not in Chabad, who are that they're mamish. They march to the beat of their own drum, and a big Talmid Chacham. I'm not saying it in a bad way, but they're completely independent, creative thinkers. They're not mishubed to anything. They're not answerable to anyone. I'm not advocating for that at all. We're not like that. First of all, we have Rabbi that we have to answer to, and a Lubavitch Rav who is paskening something that goes against psakim that we have from our Rebbeim, or not only psakim but hashkafis that we were makabel from our Rebbeim. That's not correct. So as Lubavitcher Rabbanim, we're answerable to someone, we're meshubah to something. We definitely do have mesiris in certain things. We do have minhagim in certain things. The only thing I was saying before is not to take it out of the context that it's in and apply it to new things, but we don't necessarily have a Messiah to. And Baruch Hashem, it says we have so much. There are certain things that we don't necessarily have minhagim on and Messiahs on, and befrat in the modern era, that's chadashim lo bekarim. There are new things, new metzias, new shilas that are things that we have to analyze from scratch. So, but we definitely in many cases have messiahs that we have to follow. Chassidishe Rav is, first of all, is a Rav who there are so many shilas that people ask, and in Bais Hora'ah we have shilas every day. There's so many shilas that they're not necessarily halachic shilas. They're ashkafic shilas. And if you'd go ask the same shaila to a Rav from a different community, so, what's the big deal? Al pi halacha it's mutter. We have a concept. It's not a Chabad concept specifically. It's a Gemara with Kaddish Asim Chabad Mutter Lach. Was mit tarminit, and was mit meg, darf man, not always. There are certain things, but again, you have to be careful with this. There are certain people who are not necessarily shaykh to Kaddish Asim Chabad Mutter Lach. They're not holding there, and we need to be maskil eldol, so to speak. But and to understand that when you're answering a shaila, it's not necessarily to think not only what is the dry halacha, what we can we find a loophole, but what does the Eibishter want in this situation, and to try to do not just again to be Yetzazayin, but to remember that ultimately, I know after the Kuchabrichu, that we're servants of the Eibishter. We have to do things. We have to be Mekayim the Ratzon Hashem. Even sometimes lifnei mishur sadin, or to take things that are more of a it's hard to pin down because it's subtle, but Chassidishe Rav, every shaila has a Chassidishe hergish to it, whether it's a hergish of Avos Yisrael for somebody who needs a kula, or a hergish of Yir Shemayim, in cases where where that's appropriate. So I hope that answers the question. I don't know if it made any sense.
No, shkoyach. And if you could just be Messiahim with a couple words about Bais Hora'ah Chabad and how you would best advise people that to use, when's the service an appropriate service, and when is it what's it coming to serve and what's it not coming to serve, and maybe just 60 seconds about what the goals of Bais Hora'ah Chabad are.
Okay, so Bais Hora'ah Chabad is an incredible initiative from Merkos Torah in order to provide people to have access to a Rav to ask a Shaila whenever they need in a way that's convenient for them. There are three ways, I think, to contact us. We have a phone that's open. You call between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and a Rav will answer your call. If somebody doesn't answer, you'll get a call back. And you can send in Shilas on WhatsApp. And on the website, there's a form that you can fill out to send in Shilas, and that's you can send in Shilas 24/7, 24/6, and you get an answer at the earliest convenience. Usually, within most of the time, within a couple minutes. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, depending on certain things, but usually pretty quickly. Who's it there to serve? It's really there is a gap there that needs to be filled, and the fact is that it's very hard for a lot of people to reach a Rav. And even though there are many amazing Rabbanim who make themselves incredibly available and accessible, and the Beis of Crown Heights also has a hotline and a service that is very available and accessible, but everybody is limited. Everybody's a human being. There's only so much that one person or a certain team of people can handle. And the fact is that there is a need for more. So people who have Shilas, you're welcome to send in on WhatsApp, to call, to speak to Rav. And
what's the phone number?
What is the phone number? It's a good question.
347.
To find the number, hold on. 347-688-7917. WhatsApp or a call.
347-688-7917. Bais Hora'ah Chabad.com. And Rabbi Polityko is there, together with Rabbi Mendel Prescott, and Rabbi Ehud Kvin, and Rav Tuvia Kasimov, and there's a Choshen Mishpat Rabbanim that they consult with regularly. And here you got a little bit of a window into one of the new shining lights in Lubavitch, and you should continue having Hatzlacha in your own growth and sharing it with the others. And thank you for your time, Rabbi Polityko.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay, Kol
Tov.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share to help bring it to more people, which brings Mashiach. And if you want coaching that actually shifts you, just reach out to me at leviholisticcoach@gmail.com. See you in the next video.